Yeah, we can change it. I've got a simple solution, Matthew. I did raise this in the Commons a few weeks ago. During last summer's riots, fair play to Starmer, he stopped the riots within about 2 weeks. And what he did was he got them arrested, in the dock, in prison, within 10 to 14 days. The riots stopped straight away. You get caught with a knife, in court the following day, prison the following day, 5-year mandatory sentence, it would stop in a week.
I think that's...
It would,
well, hang on.
The problem is the police are too bothered about people's expos, so they don't care about actual murderers.
That's a sort of extreme characterisation. The police are faced with enormous challenges. I think we do need more police. I think that Reform London Assembly member was right to call for more police.
So why does Sadiq Khan refuse to work with him?
Hang on. Sadiq Khan doesn't need to agree to that particular amendment, which would involve sacking staff at City Hall in order to get more police on the streets. The question is Lee right that sending people to prison immediately for 5 years, would that work? Possibly. And if it would work, it's something very much worth looking at, I would say.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. These are potential solutions. The problem is we don't have the funding and necessary resources for these kind of policy initiatives. And ultimately, the problem is police time is actually being wasted on so much.
If we can take the rioters, as we did last summer, and lob them into prison within a fortnight, we can take these people carrying knives, because the message would get out very, very quickly in places like London that if you carry a knife, you're going to jail for 5 years, and I'll tell you what, they'd stop doing it.
I think you're totally right. The problem is we don't have any of the prison spaces because we refuse to build any new prisons.
Yeah, but we have the spaces for the rioters.
We seem to have the spaces for the rioters, but we seem to not have the space for people that actually commit horrendous crimes. I mean, the fact of the matter is we have to release people early because we just don't have the space in these prisons. We need to build new prisons. We also need to stop arresting people for silly crimes. I personally believe that if you're found with a small amount of marijuana, you shouldn't go to prison.
If the deterrence were much harsher, Matthew, you wouldn't need as many prison spaces.
If you're right. If the deterrent works...
Have you been to Singapore? I went there last year. Have you seen the deterrence they've got there?
I would like to live in Singapore. I wouldn't. I
would.
Want to live in an authoritarian state. Thank you very much. But I think longer sentences for people carrying knives are worth looking at. And people might say, well, hang on, do you really want to bang an 18-year-old starting out in life who's felt scared, has carried a knife, has made a mistake? Do you want to bang them away for 5 years?
Hold on a minute, Matthew.
Let me respond.
The Southport killer was 17 and carrying knives and killed 3 little children.
Let me respond. And the answer to that would be, well, if it stops people losing their lives, you don't come back when you're dead, then that might be worth it. Whether it would work or not, I'm not sure.
The discussion on GB News, featuring Reform UK MP Lee Anderson, alongside commentators Reem Amir Ibrahim and Matthew Stadlen, brings to light the urgent and complex issue of knife crime in the UK. Anderson's pointed criticism of the police, accusing them of prioritizing monitoring social media posts over tackling serious crimes like murder, highlights a perception of misaligned priorities within law enforcement. This sentiment resonates with a broader frustration among the public, who expect the police to focus their resources on combating violent crime rather than engaging in activities that appear peripheral to their core mission. Anderson's remark reflects a growing concern about the effectiveness of modern policing strategies. The rise of online monitoring as part of law enforcement's remit, while important in certain contexts, raises questions about whether this focus detracts from addressing more immediate threats to public safety. Knife crime, which continues to claim lives and devastate communities, requires targeted interventions, robust enforcement, and a visible police presence. When resources are stretched thin and priorities seem misplaced, public confidence in the justice system erodes, leaving communities feeling vulnerable and unsupported. Reem Amir Ibrahim and Matthew Stadlen's contribution to the discussion adds further depth by exploring alternative solutions to knife crime. These include addressing the root causes of violence such as poverty, lack of education, and limited opportunities for young people in marginalized communities. Preventative measures like youth engagement programs, better mental health support, and community policing are often cited as effective strategies. However, implementing these solutions requires long-term commitment and investment, something many believe has been lacking in recent years. The conversation also raises questions about the role of government policy in addressing knife crime. Critics argue that both Labour and Conservative governments have failed to provide a coherent strategy for tackling this issue. Budget cuts to police forces and community programs have compounded the problem, leaving officers overwhelmed and communities underserved. Meanwhile, punitive measures alone, such as harsher sentences, may deter some individuals but do little to address the systemic issues driving young people toward crime.
Left to try and emulate what Donald Trump does here, even if it does prove to be a success. It puts him in an almost impossible position.
Well, let's be honest, Keir Starmer and Labour Party are in power mainly because of the disgust that much of the population had with the previous incumbents, not because of great dynamic excitement about him or them. They've rapidly demonstrated that no matter how unpopular the previous lot are, they can do even worse. That's their great achievement. I think on the day that we've discovered all sorts of things, like that there were 3 introductions for this murderer we now know in Southport, that treating the public with such contempt is a big problem. And Keir Starmer can call Elon Musk all sorts of things, but we and the public, and we know this from the public and our hundreds of thousands of signatures and people we meet all the time, they want to be treated seriously. They want to have transparent, open discussion. We're adults. No more of this kind of series of impositions. And look, like they said they wouldn't do certain things, then they go and do it. Whether you're a pensioner or a farmer, IHT, family, business, students, the list goes on and on. But they want to look after a few of their friends, it seems, in the public sector. But how does the NHS get paid for? It gets paid for by economic dynamism. We can have a period where we can be positive, and we should be about our future. Still the 6th biggest economy in the world. Great relationship of friendship with America. We should all take sort of inspiration from
Keir Starmer's leadership is increasingly coming under scrutiny, and for good reason. The lack of genuine enthusiasm for Starmer, even among his own supporters, reflects a deeper issue with his leadership style and vision, or rather, the lack thereof. His position as Labour leader has largely been sustained not by passion or inspiration, but by the public's disillusionment with other political figures. This is a fragile foundation for leadership, particularly in a political climate where dynamic and visionary leaders like the US president or innovators like Elon Musk are capturing imaginations and setting bold agendas. Starmer's leadership is marked by a series of broken promises and mistruths, as highlighted by his track record with pensioners, farmers, businesses, and ordinary citizens. His promises often feel more like hollow rhetoric than actionable commitments. For instance, his pledges to protect pensioners and support rural communities ring hollow when contrasted with Labour's proposals that seem disconnected from the realities of those they claim to champion. Farmers and business owners who require stability and foresight have been left wondering if Starmer truly understands their struggles or if he's merely pandering for political gain.